The Tesla Model Y is currently the most popular EV being sold. So what's there to get excited about? Why is it so popular? There's actually quite a lot, even against new competition from the Ford Mustang Mach-E and the Volkswagen ID.4. It's not without its quirks though. You may be asking, that's an SUV? Well, it's a high-riding hatchback with all-wheel drive, and compared with the related Model 3, it has an open cargo area with rear liftgate versus a sedan with a trunk. So yes, by today's standards, this is an SUV. It actually has a near identical footprint to the BMW X4. Tesla didn't have any Model Ys for press evaluation, so this is actually some guy's Model Y. A very nice guy, in fact, who traded us 2 weeks of time in his Model Y for a lump of money. It's actually a great example of what kind of Model Y you get for $54,000. It's an all-wheel drive, long range with an EPA rated 326 miles of range. Does 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds, and this one has the optional 20-inch wheels instead of the standard 19s, plus it has optional black paint, because every color other than white, you're paying for it. And that's it. It doesn't have the optional $10,000 self-driving package. It doesn't have the optional third row, and it doesn't have the optional tow hitch that lets it tow up to 3,500 pounds. Let's start off by looking at the Model Y as an SUV. An SUV's defining characteristic is its cargo room. And the Model Y, even for its compact proportions, has a lot of cargo area. Behind the front seats, there's a sizable amount, and then it's augmented by 2 large storage bins. One, an underfloor storage in the back, and then the other is the front trunk, the frunk. Now, both of these bins in the front and the rear, they're sizable. There is room back there and in the front for things of meaningful size. We perform our own cargo testing that gives a level playing field for specification comparison. OEM specs can vary in methodology and body style, but we measured 20.9 cubic feet behind the Model Y's back seat, including the rear tub. Now that's more than what we've measured in the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Mustang Mach-E. It's also just a little bit more than hybrid compact SUVs like the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid and the Honda CR-V Hybrid. The back seat folds in a 40-20-40 split. And while they do fold, they don't fold quite flat. When the back seat is folded, then you add in the cargo space in the front trunk. What looks like a small car on the outside can haul items like a big SUV, as long as it's not one big item. There's generous cargo room, but there's also a good amount of passenger room. Now in an EV like this, you don't have floor humps for exhaust or drive shafts, so the floor is wide open, and there are also these nice little cutouts for your feet at the bottom of the front seats. Now, in the second row here, very comfortable. It reclines, but it doesn't slide, and just one click back is the sweet spot comfort level for me. Now, also helping comfort back here are these rear air vents. It's not an individual climate control system like you see in some luxury SUVs where the backseat user has control, but when the front climate control has the rear vents on, very powerful, still very comfortable back here. Now we're in the 2-row model. There is an optional third row, but good luck with that one. What's not SUV-like is how the Model Y drives. It's an aggressively tuned suspension setup for sporty intentions. It's more like the Model 3, which has that sports car feel to it. Now, if you're driving in the Midwest like us, where potholes are merely a feature of our road infrastructure and not necessarily a problem, then you might find it tuned a little too stiffly if you're not looking for that sports car feel. But if you are looking for that sports car feel, I actually think the Model Y's handling dynamics are competent enough, dynamic enough, fun to drive, that stiff ride can actually be worth it. It's nimbler driving than the Mach-E, which has a bit of a bloated feeling and beats you up without much of that reward in the fun to drive factor. Mostly, EVs in general don't ride that well. The one exception is the ID.4. Now, that's the one you want if you don't want to feel the road as much as the others. The Model Y's acceleration is punchy, rewarding, and for those who haven't driven an EV before, you'll be blown away by how quickly the Model Y accelerates. To me, the Model Y accelerated harder for longer than the Mach-E, despite equal 0 to 60 mile an hour claims from each automaker. Where the Mach-E pulled back around 50 miles an hour and you felt acceleration slowing, the Model Y just seems to be getting started at 50 miles an hour. Where there's less confidence is in the Model Y's visibility. Now up front, it's pretty good. The A-pillars are a little thick at their base, but not too much of an issue with front visibility. Rear visibility, not great. There's only a small rear window and over-the-shoulder visibility is blocked by the aggressive rear roofline. Now that's just purely the physical visibility. There's more to that in the Model Y, and that's with its camera system. Now there is a rear view camera, and it's not a backup camera where normally you'd put it in reverse, it pops up and then goes away when you put it in drive. This can be up on the screen while you're driving to show what's behind you, as well as there are 2 side view mirrors to show you what's in your blind spot. It's a little distracting to look down at this. There are other ways automakers give you those rear driving cameras through the rear view mirror, where it's a rear view camera mirror. Though those aren't without their faults either, because it's hard to focus if you wear glasses on those. What the Model Y doesn't have is a traditional blind spot monitoring system. Now it does give you some information of what's in your blind spot, the cameras, for example, like we talked about, but also this driving status indicator. Now what it doesn't have though are side view mirrors with little orange indicators like your traditional blind spot monitoring system that you can see out of your periphery when something is in your blind spot. Here, the display is going to show you, but it has a very high threshold that it will chime to warn you something is there. You do have to look down to see, but when there is something in your blind spot, you have multiple ways. It just takes getting used to, and I prefer the more traditional blind spot monitoring system. So this driving status indicator, it's a preview of the self-driving capability. Now the car is not able to drive itself right now, but this is just showing you what the car is seeing. And you can turn this information off, but it is really interesting as far as what the car recognizes. Now it can show you different body styles of cars. So you'll see a sedan or an SUV or a pickup truck or a box truck or a city bus, and not just cars either. It'll show traffic cones and trash cans and pedestrians, motorcycles, bicycles. So it is that preview of full self-driving, but there's really nothing actionable that you can do right now with it. So the Model Y as an SUV, it checks those boxes. It's a modern SUV, which is a high-riding hatchback with all-wheel drive. But what about the Model Y as a Tesla? Like other Teslas I've reviewed, range anxiety just isn't really a thing that comes to mind while driving these. And it's more than just purely because there's a lot of range, which there is, 326 miles of EPA rated range. No, it's more about how the Tesla informs you how efficiently you're driving. So there are all sorts of information displays and efficiency minders that if you needed to get a little more range out of it, this empowers you to do that. For example, this is the trip monitor. Now it only works when there's a navigation destination entered, but the gray line is the predictive energy usage. It shows you your start percentage and your end percentage of the battery. And the green line, which is overlaid, is your actual efficiency. And you can use this to make real-time corrections to your driving style. You see right away that, oh, you know, stop driving like an ass, drive normally, and you'll get to your destination with as much range as it says that you should. Out of all EVs, this is probably one of the most useful information graphics I've used to help you understand how driving habits affect efficiency. One of the ways to improve efficiency is to alter the regenerative braking amount, or how much the car feeds surplus energy back to the battery. Now, I prefer driving in the hold mode, which is the most aggressive mode, and that drives like a one-pedal driving. You're just using the accelerator to go, and you let off, and it stops on its own very aggressively. Now I did that by choice, which unlike the Mustang Mach-E, where the brake pedal just has a really jerky feeling, that you use one pedal drive mode because it's your only option to drive smoothly. But in the Model Y, I like using it because it's the most efficient, even though the Model Y's brake pedal is quite good on its own. We recommend home charging for EV ownership, but supercharging is Tesla's fastest way to charge, and there are plentiful stations, especially here in the Chicago area. You might be able to get by charging exclusively through a supercharger, but that could be expensive. On the Model Y, supercharging is not included, and Tesla also recommends to minimize DC fast charging like supercharging to preserve battery health. On an optimal home setup, you can charge the Model Y up to a maximum 42 miles of range per hour at 48 amps with a charge rate of 11.5 kilowatts, which is the measure of how fast you can charge. At a more average 24 amps, which is what you'd find on a 240 volt home dryer circuit, you're still charging at 21 miles of range per hour. And when you're on a road trip or on the go, supercharging is the way to go. Around us, there are a number of 250 kilowatt superchargers, and we're at a 150 kilowatt supercharger right now. Now that's 150 kilowatts versus home charging maximum 11.5 kilowatts. So it really is fast. You know, right now we're plugged in and we're charging at about 400 to 500 miles of range per hour. So that means we're gonna go from 25% battery life to a fully charged in what the car tells us about 50 minutes. While you're waiting at a supercharger, there are some pretty fun games. My favorite is the Mario Kart style Beach Buggy Racing 2, where you use the steering wheels and pedals to play the game, which actually uses a caricature of your car. There are also funny apps like emissions testing mode, nice, karaoke, and a lot of these features have been added over the air. And then there's autopilot. So what is it? What isn't it? Autopilot is a semi-autonomous driver assist system. It's an advanced cruise control. And right now it's a hands-on system that's not recommended to be used hands-free. It has a current set of abilities, but those can't expand in the future, especially if you opt for the available $10,000 full self-driving capability package. Now that's going to unlock more advanced features, not on our car, but if your car is equipped with that package, it will allow you to do navigation on autopilot, auto lane change, auto park, summon, and there's also auto steer on city streets that will come later. What's nice about autopilot is that it's standard. You don't have to pay extra for the basic autopilot system, and it works well. It centers the car in its lane, and when engaged, there's a lot of confidence driving this car that it's going to follow the road and keep its distance. The thing is, that functionality isn't particularly unique anymore. There are other systems out there that functionally on the road do the same thing. When it comes to what we want, honestly, the biggest omission I see is the lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is almost inexcusable at this point. Since the last Teslas I've reviewed though in 2018, Spotify integration has been added, which is nice as a Spotify user. And the Tesla maps, they do work well, and you'd lose a lot of that integration if you use Google Maps. The efficiency scale, the ability to route superchargers, that just wouldn't carry over. I wanted CarPlay more for apps I use on my phone for streaming music and podcasts. We also want a proper speedometer in front of your face. Yeah, you get used to using the screen speedometer in the upper left corner of the 15-inch display, but I really want a proper instrument panel like the Mach-E or the ID.4. Years ago, I reviewed an add-on heads-up display called Navdi that worked pretty well, which could work here, but they're not around anymore. Also, the wireless charging just doesn't work that well. I have a case that's designed to work with wireless charging and work with the phone, but I have to take my phone out of the case to work with the Model Y's factory wireless charging. Those areas of wants are served up in other competing EVs. But it's easy to see why the Model Y is so popular. Size is right, it's got great usability for its size, it's fun to drive, fun to own. It's rather affordable in the context of similar luxury SUVs, and also Tesla's charging infrastructure is really hard to beat. The Model Y does do a couple goofy things, and I wouldn't really expect to see those addressed through over-the-air updates or hardware changes if you buy one right now, but there are compelling options if those are deal breakers for you. More options than even a year ago. But it's really hard to look elsewhere when the Model Y does so many things so well.